as someone who's personally bought in a hot market, yes, that's right, property experts even do silly things like buy in hot markets.
Welcome to Ask the Experts, where each week we talk to people in the industry to get the inside word on what's happening right now and what that means for the tactics you should use to make the most of your money. And this week I've partnered up with realestate.co.nz, who's kindly lent us their expert Vanessa Williams, and we are talking about what actually happens with house values, the myths and the truth of it. Making Sense is partnered with realestate.co.nz to get you the info you need in today's market. Property hunting can be a bit of an emotional roller coaster with its fair share of stress. That's where realestate.co.nz comes in. They've been helping Kiwis buy, sell and rent since 1996, and their app is designed to make it easier and faster. What sets them apart? Flexibility. Realestate.co.nz gives you so many ways to search and so much information to help you make decisions. Realestate.co.nz. Download the app today. Before we get into it, Making Sense is stoked to be supported by Kiwibank. We've teamed up to bring you insight directly from their people, the experts who live and breathe this stuff every day. It's not the outdated stuff that worked 5 years ago. It's what's happening right now in the industry to help you make the most of your money. This is making Kiwi better off. This is Kiwi. So hi Vanessa, thank you so much for coming back on. You must have been in this situation before, right? Because I definitely have. Classic Kiwi barbecue, someone finds out what you do for a living, they want the inside word, and I've found certainly what often comes out when talking property, people will say, oh yes, values double every 10 years. And that always, it gives me a little pause, How about you? Have you run into that situation before?
Oh, all the time. And hey, look, thanks so much for having me back, and lovely to, see you all again for the new year. But look, I actually say one of my girlfriends works for Auckland Transport, and when we go to a barbecue together, we certainly get all the questions, because Kiwis love to chat about travel and property, and then so we've got all topics covered there. But no, Francis, I absolutely do get that question a lot, and what I think's what drives that, and my honest belief is that we have such a passion for property here in New Zealand, and you've got to think about it. It wasn't until just recently when we got KiwiSaver that property was pretty much most people's retirement plan. And so, when you think about that, there's a lot of investment in that. It's part of our DNA. We're sort of like, right, go to school, we might do a bit of a trade or go to university or go to Polytechnic, and then we buy a house and have a family. That's sort of what we've been taught for generations. And I love that now it's changing and there's so many other ways you can do that process. But, up until just very recently, that was kind of our retirement plan here in New Zealand, but also, a lot of what we had sort of drilled into us when we went to school. So, I love going to barbecues and I love chatting about it. And I also love that question. So what happens, Vanessa? Does it double every 10 years?
Okay, then. So as the data queen, what is the truth of it? Does it double every 10 years?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good question to think about, because when you look at some sets of data, and we'll get into property cycles in a moment, but sometimes it can be really uplifting and really exciting because you're like, wow, we've had this boom. And I think nobody will be, unless you're hiding under a rock for the last sort of 3 years, that there was a massive boom as we came out of COVID, because as I said, Kiwis love what? Travel and property. We got locked down, we couldn't travel. So hey, here we are all chatting about property, and we saw the market really boom. And at the back end of that boom, you might have seen a really significant chunky growth in the property that you own, whether it be an investment or the house that you live in. But what can happen is that cycles do happen, and as we will also know, if again, back out from under that rock if you've been under one, is that we see drop-offs happen because markets change, markets need to stabilize, and at the moment we're actually coming off the back of something that's actually quite unusual for a property market, which is quite a significant decline. Now I say that, so don't freak out everybody or I get everybody worrying, but that's from the absolute peak of the market. Now, something we always say with property is that not everybody has the luxury of this, but really try to take a long-term view of property, because typically you don't need to or want to try and transact within a shorter period of time, because that's when you can really be succumb to market forces. And if you're on the wrong end of those, rough. So data queen, by the way, I love that. So let me get into a little bit of the data. So what we have sort of seen in the current situation that we're in at the moment, we measure 19 regions across New Zealand. And in the latest set of data, we went, right, starting today, going back 10 years, how did that sort of fare across the regions? And about 9 of the 19 regions did double, so over 100% increase. And of course everybody out there is going, go on, was it me? I'll just quickly whip through them. We have got Waikato, Wairarapa, Manawatu, Wanganui, Hawke's Bay, Gisborne, Coromandel, Central Otago and the Lakes District, Southland and Central North Island. And I am just going to do a little short shout out to Taranaki and Marlborough, because they got 97%. So they were
That's pretty close.
There.
We'll count that.
Yeah, we'll give them an A+. So if we're counting those two, that is 11 of our 19 regions did actually double. And so that is a strong sentiment that property is a long-term investment. And also what it does tell us is that, while there are some areas that didn't quite double, every region across New Zealand was well over 50%.
That's interesting though, because you've got so many there that did double and then a whole bunch that didn't, right? So it's not entirely true. It's depending on your district. I imagine there's so many factors that must go into it. I'm sure the property type and all sorts plays into it, but it is far from a sure thing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, it's what I would say is, like any stat or any kind of, anecdotal tidbit that you hear about any kind of market, is there's usually some truth in it. And the reason I say that is because you could look at national, you could look at districts, you could look at regions, you could look at suburbs, and you could look at asking prices, or you could look at sale prices, or you look at valuations. And across history there is definitely a mix of all of those, where house prices have doubled every 10 years, and it's usually more than less. So let's put it that way, more than less. But you are dead right, there are a few there that didn't double, and that comes a little bit about what I spoke about earlier into the property cycle that we're in at the moment. So let's just do a bit of a rewind, pretend we're back in 2021 for a moment. If I look at that data, just to give you a bit of context, so we're talking about that real peak that I was talking about in the property market. We're all coming out of COVID. We're all just focusing on property. There was a hive of activity in the market. If I look at the national average asking price at that point, we were around 960,000. If I look 10 years earlier, 473,000. So that was 103% increase on a 10-year gap. So that's where I wanted to sort of chat a little bit about property cycles, because that there was us taking the absolute tip and the point and the top of the market and going back 10 years. And that is great if you perhaps bought 10 years ago and then sold at that exact point, but can mean something quite different if you didn't do that exact equation.
And it's so hard, right? Because I think one of the things that people look back on, and they'll say something like, oh, obviously the housing market was so much at that point. Obviously it was a bad idea to buy then. And I think when the housing market is running really hot, it's actually not so obvious when you're in it. You can look back on it and say, oh, that was running really hot. There was all these factors at play. So much easier to look back on that with a cool head and see some of the signs that aren't so obvious when you're in it. So, as you say, there are property cycles. Walk us through a little bit. What even is a property cycle when we're talking about this?
Yeah, great question, because I completely agree with you. If you have to buy a house and you're in a hot market, you just want to find a house and want to pay for it and buy it, right? Because typically if you are buying, there's a reason for that. It's not like you can say, whoop, this is too hot for me, I'm just going to cool my jets and wait till this all cools down. And I think as someone who's personally bought in a hot market, yes, that's right, property experts even do silly things like buy in hot markets. But, we needed a house, and I was walking into open homes with 30 offers on a table. Like, it was just crazy. But at the time I was like, but we need a house. And I think also something, you're not alone if you've been in the market and thinking, but if I don't buy now, what is the price going to be in 2 years? Like, I'm never going to be able to afford a house. So don't feel like if you felt that way that you're alone, because as I said, I bought in one of the booms and thinking, oh my goodness, I need to buy now, otherwise what's going to happen? So a property cycle is exactly that. It's sort of, there's three things that are absolutely certain about the property market. It will either go up, it will either go down, or it will stay stagnant. Like those three, there's no crystal ball required, Francis. I can tell you that's absolutely something that's going to happen. And the property cycle really, it kind of brings together the combination of those three. So we look at a trend of a cycle in whether it's going up, sideways, or down for about a 12-month period. Mm-hmm. And to give all our lovely listeners a bit of context, the last 2 years we have been stagnant. Because 2 years ago, our national average asking price was $850, and I just got the data a couple of days ago, and it is $848. So we've dropped $2,000 as a national average asking price across 2 years. So that's been flat now for a good 2 years. Now, this is probably the best time to explain a cycle, because prior to that, 2021, we saw it go from the top of the market, let's call it $1 million just for all those easy maths brains out there, $1 million, and it dropped back to $850 really quickly. Now that there was a downturn of a market, dropped from $1 million down to $850, and we've seen it be $850 basically for the past 2 years. And then I'll talk to you about the boom, which I think we're probably all accustomed to, was that coming out of COVID, I call it waking up, going, right, can't travel, so it's time to check out some property. And again, we went just as quickly from $800,000 to $1 million, and we're talking in a year, that we dropped from $1 million to $850. So that there was a real extreme demonstration of a property cycle there. We had $200,000 increase in 1 year, swiftly dropped off by 15% down to $850, and then we've seen it really stagnate. And that is why, when your earlier point in question was around, there's still a few there that haven't moved, it's because we have that lovely big drop in the middle, which I would say lovely big drop because probably buyers liked it, sellers not so keen, always a two-sided market.
Yeah, 100%. Because this is the thing, we'll often talk at various points about all sorts of different investments on this podcast, about what sort of percentages you might expect in a year. And the thing is, underneath all those percentages, that's always an average number, right? Mm-hmm. Is you might say, oh, X% return on this type of investment, X% on this. And that's based on, as we've been talking about, the average over a 10-year period. So it might be 15% in 1 year, it might be -5 the next, and then another 10% up the year after that. So the line goes up overall, but you've got these big peaks and troughs in between. That's just reality in the money world, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And I think you can get yourself a little bit concerned when you see those. But what I would say to anybody who's got any type of property is that just remember, if you don't have to buy or sell today, don't get yourself worried about it. And I hear that people say to me quite often, but my house was worth. And I say, well, you're not selling right now, and you didn't need to sell at that time. So it actually wasn't worth anything. It's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it the day that you want to put it onto the market. Yeah. And so focus on that. As I said, I purchased in a boom, and then for the next 3 years, my house had technically negative equity to what I paid for it, because the housing market dropped back after I'd bought it. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, have I made the right decision here? But of course, had to live somewhere. And also, it's a longer term investment for me as well. So, over time that we build that back up. But yeah, you don't want to get yourself too frightened, especially if you're in it for the long term.
Exactly. It balances out over a period of years. If you can just hold on there, that's often the trick. Again, with so many different areas of the money world. If you're looking for property, start with realestate.co.nz, New Zealand's longest standing property site. They've been dedicated exclusively to property since 1996. That's even before Google. Whether you're buying or renting, no other property site gives you as much information. The Market Insights feature lets you view the median asking, sale and rental prices in a suburb for over 1, 3 or even 10 years. Want to know what a property is worth? The estimated sale price range uses the latest sales figures from the real estate industry. Scroll to the bottom of a property listing to discover what it sold for in the past, the council valuation, and what you can expect to pay for it, even before you view it. Become the property expert. Download the realestate.co.nz app and make informed decisions fast. Life is full of ups and downs, so no matter what your everyday looks like, Kiwibank has the products and services to help you manage your money your way. To find out more, head to kiwibank.co.nz. This is making Kiwi better off. This is Kiwibank. As we've talked through, this can be different district by district. So if someone does want to keep an eye on this and see what camp are they falling into, what's going on, what sort of things can they check out? How do you keep an eye on this?
Yeah, great question. And personally, I love, as the data queen, I just love these types of things. What I would recommend is go and save some properties that are not on the market. So go and save off-market properties on the likes of realestate.co.nz or your favorite property portal site. And what will happen is you will get emailed every month around what's happening with CVs, with the estimate values, and you can keep an eye on not only your property, maybe your investment, maybe a dream home. I saved the ones that I really want to buy, or maybe just one that you've got an eye on for a realistic investment, that you think maybe I'll just keep an eye on that area. The other thing I would say is do keep across property news as well. But what I would say is have a look at the headlines and read the articles, and then go and find the source of that data and maybe check out that website or have a look at the information yourself, because quite often there is more information there, especially if you're interested in your own region or type of property. The last thing I would say is go and just visit open homes and go and check out your local real estate agents. Chat to them. What's happening with 3-bedroom homes in Onehunga at the moment? What is happening in Seatoon? Just go and ask the questions, have a nosy around. And, if you're kind of really interested in that type of information, it's all quite readily available, typically in your local real estate office or agent, with your local real estate office or agent as well.
Also, can I just say it's actually just so fun going to open homes on the weekend. I always laugh about my husband and I. The local real estate agents must hate us because we're just absolute tire kickers. If we see an open home flag out, we're like, ooh, let's just go look. And half the time I'm just getting decor inspiration because I love looking at what other people have done with their homes. But it is interesting seeing what's out there, what sort of prices they're hoping for. You have a little chat to the agent and say, what are they hoping for? What sort of region are they aiming for? And then you have a look around the house and you say, tell them they're dreaming, But it's fun. This sort of stuff, you can keep an eye on it in whatever way works best for you. It's fun.
I totally agree. It's some really cost-effective entertainment on the weekends, If you're on a budget, it's a good way to sort of get yourself au fait with the property market while not costing too much money. As long as you don't buy the house.
Have a snoop around someone's house. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it will cost a lot if you get suckered into buying it. Thank you so much. That's Vanessa Williams from realestate.co.nz giving us the inside word on the truths behind the myths. We love it. Now, if you have more questions on this or anything else to do with money, send them through. This one was based on a listener question, so we always try to answer them for you if we can in a future episode. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok as Frances Cook NZ. Also heaps more money content on there for you. Don't forget to subscribe to Making Sense so that you get even more tips and tricks with your money. And until next time, have a great day. Just a note before you go. This podcast can only give you general information about how things work in most cases. It's not individual financial advice. We're all different, so some of this might not apply to your specific situation. Take what works for you, ignore the rest. If you're after individual financial advice, a financial advisor is always the best bet.